let's get right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to take a second and just completely ditch your modern comforts. Forget your thermostat, those cozy IKEA blankets, even the ability to get piping hot food delivered right to your door. Because today, we're taking a journey back to the brutal, freezing realities of the Ice Age to uncover the ultimate ancient human masterclass in survival.
Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine waking up to this freezing reality. And we're not talking about a temporary winter storm that knocked out the power grid for a few days. Now, this was the everyday, inescapable reality that our ancestors successfully navigated for roughly 10,000 years. You're dealing with absolutely zero heating, up to 16 hours of pitch black darkness, and oh yeah, the very real threat of massive predators, like cave lions roaming right outside your camp. And to put that climate into perspective, right around the last glacial maximum, so 20,000 years ago, average global temperatures were just 6 degrees Celsius colder than they are today. Now, 6 degrees might not sound like a huge number, right? But let me tell you, that is the dramatic difference between a bustling modern city like London today and that exact same landscape being buried under a solid kilometer of ice. Literally a mile of solid ice. So, how do you survive that world? Well, early humans relied on a few critical pillars. Pillar number 1, fire, the ultimate survival system. Now, what's really interesting here is we need to completely strip away the assumption that ancient humans just gathered around a campfire to warm their hands. Fire was an absolute, multifaceted survival system. It was cooking food to boost usable calories. It was literally your most reliable bodyguard against a 300-kilogram cave lion that otherwise had absolutely no reason to fear you. It hardened wooden tools, provided light for essential social bonding during those insanely long nights, and crucially, it dried wet clothes. And drying clothes, that is the literal difference between temporary discomfort and immediate lethal hypothermia. Because of all this, the communal firekeeper carried an immense responsibility. If you lost the fire, that could mean a death sentence for the entire group.
And the impact of fire goes all the way down to our biology. As evolutionary biologist Richard Wrangham points out, cooking our food made calories so dramatically more bioavailable that it actually changed our evolution. We basically engaged in this fascinating evolutionary trade-off where cooking did the intense digestive work our guts used to do. So we literally traded gut tissue for the brain tissue that makes us human today. Incredible, right?
Moving on to our second survival pillar, prehistoric architecture and shelter. And trust me, we're going way beyond this simple cave here. It is definitely time to completely debunk that dumb caveman stereotype once and for all. These people were engineering complex, deliberate shelters. Now, yes, they did use deep caves, and for a really great reason. Deep caves acted as an excellent natural wind-blocking microclimate. They actually maintained a surprisingly survivable baseline temperature of 10 to 13 degrees Celsius all year round. When you combine that stable baseline with a roaring fire and shared body heat, you've got a highly effective shelter against those deadly winter winds. But humans naturally followed migrating resources, right? And caves weren't always available on the go, so they built. Consider this staggering architectural feat from 15,000-year-old Ukraine. Without a single piece of modern hardware, they built massive circular houses out of mammoth bones. Think about that. They sourced specific bones from up to 150 individual mammoths, expertly interlocking jaws and femurs for the walls, tying massive tusks overhead to act as a ridge beam, and then stretching animal hides tightly over the whole frame for windproofing. I mean, this was sophisticated prehistoric architecture and interior design. Now, obviously, a great shelter is totally useless if you freeze to death the second you step outside. So that brings us to our third pillar, advanced layered clothing. Biologically speaking, humans are naked apes. Without sophisticated insulation in sub-zero temps, we die of hypothermia in mere hours. To survive, our ancestors became master tailors, and the timeline of this tech is just astonishing. Researchers trace our earliest clothing back 170,000 years, which is right around the time body lice actually diverged from head lice. But by 40,000 years ago, early humans were crafting precision bone needles across Europe and Siberia that were so fine, we're talking eyes just a single millimeter in diameter, that modern researchers genuinely struggle to replicate them today. And by 34,000 years ago, like we see in the Sunjur burial in Russia, they were wearing deeply complex, layered garments adorned with thousands of individually sewn ivory beads. Let's move to and see how this builds. To make these clothes, they utilized a brilliant chemical process called brain tanning. This was a highly labor-intensive method where they used the harvested animal's own brain tissue, mixed it with water to chemically soften and preserve the raw hides. It essentially transformed stiff animal skin into vital, supple, and durable survival gear that was practically waterproof. And the way they put these hides together was nothing short of genius. They developed a 3-layer system. You had a close-fitting inner layer against the skin for moisture management, then a middle layer for core insulation to lock in that maximum warmth, and finally, a tough, brain-tanned outer layer for wind and water resistance. This 34,000-year-old clothing system, born out of pure empirical trial and error, where, remember, failure literally meant death, is almost exactly the layering system recommended by modern outdoor mountaineering guides today. They absolutely nailed it. So, you're warm and you're sheltered, but you still need fuel. Let's look at the fourth pillar, the caloric math of winter. So, the crucial point here is that in extreme cold, your body desperately tries to maintain its core temperature. This can dramatically increase your basal metabolic rate by 50% or even more. Because of this massive energy drain, fat became the supreme currency of Ice Age nutrition. Fat yields more than twice the energy per gram compared to either protein or carbs. It was the absolute ultimate calorie-dense fuel that the human body actively burned to generate that life-saving internal heat. And this is exactly why hunting massive Ice Age animals was absolutely critical. To put that into perspective, a single 6-ton woolly mammoth provided a staggering 500,000 calories. That is an incredible haul of dense energy. It's enough to sustain a group of 25 people for several weeks in the dead of winter. But how on earth do you store 500,000 calories without a modern refrigerator? Well, you use the frozen earth itself. They dug caches directly into the permafrost, which acted as a natural deep freeze. They also preserve these massive calorie hauls by inventing highly portable survival foods like pemmican. This was an ancient, shelf-stable energy bar made of dried, pulverized meat mixed with rendered fat and sometimes berries. They were rational planners, deliberately over-preparing for the absolute worst-case scenarios. All right, now we arrive at the fifth, final, and honestly the most important pillar of our explainer: community as survival infrastructure. And this brilliantly illustrates that it is time to completely crush the modern myth of the lone wolf survivor. We have this modern obsession with the solo TV survivalist roughing it alone with 2 wet sticks for the cameras. But ancient humans did the exact opposite. Their most powerful infrastructure wasn't a physical tool, it was their deliberately maintained community. They lived in interdependent groups of 20 to 50 individuals, relying entirely on highly specialized shared knowledge. In a world with literally zero margin for error, every single person played an essential specialized role. You needed the master butcher to extract the maximum calories from a carcass. And think about the elders. An old woman who could remember the winter migration patterns from 15 years prior, or who knew every single edible root under the snow. She was not a burden on the group. She was a living, breathing library. She was entirely irreplaceable. This collective intelligence is what allowed them to undertake highly organized seasonal migrations. They weren't just aimlessly wandering around a frozen wasteland hoping to bump into food. They were tracking migrating reindeer herds, chasing highly seasonal salmon runs for these massive caloric windfalls, and even transporting specific stone tools hundreds of kilometers between established camps. They relied on vast mental maps and generational knowledge to converge on sheltered river valleys exactly when the prey arrived. And you might be wondering, how did they store all this generational knowledge without writing? Well, consider the 40,000-year-old cave paintings at places like Lascaux. Researchers actually proposed that these weren't just beautiful art, they were sophisticated visual databases. They acted like permanent hard drives carved into rock walls, tracking animal anatomy, seasonal changes, and behavioral patterns to pass down crucial survival data to the next generation. But we can't forget that the winter also brought an intense psychological toll. Long, dark months confined in tight spaces. That's a recipe for total social fragmentation. So ancient humans actively managed this using culture. They crafted 40,000-year-old bone flutes for music, they held shared ceremonies, and they passed on their accumulated knowledge through captivating fireside narratives. They knew without a doubt that a group that maintained its morale and cohesion survived, while the group that fragmented would simply die. So they were ingenious survival engineers, solving huge problems collectively at a staggering scale. Today, we've traded that incredible active communal intelligence for the pure convenience of central heating and midnight food delivery. It definitely leaves us with a profound new respect for our ancestors, but also kind of a lingering question. We gained all this comfort, sure, but looking back at the incredible resilience and power of that shared human connection, Was it entirely worth it? Thanks for exploring this amazing piece of history with me today.